The town of Maplewood woke slowly each morning, the smell of coffee rising from small porches and the sound of old pickup trucks rumbling down narrow streets. It was the kind of American town where people knew each other's dogs by name and where barbershops doubled as storytelling places. In a small apartment above the laundromat, Angela Parker prepared for another long day of work. She tied the laces of her old sneakers and took a quiet breath, trying not to wake her teenage son. Her bones ached the way they always did around sunrise, but she pushed the pain aside. She had learned a long time ago that life didn't slow down for tired mothers. Her son, Malik, was already awake, sitting at their small kitchen table with his attention fixed on a broken padlock. He held a thin tool between his fingers, turning the lock gently as if listening to a secret. Malik was 17, quiet, thoughtful, and sharp in ways he didn't even understand yet. His teachers used words like exceptional and gifted, but Malik never saw himself that way. He carried a softness that came from losing someone too early. His father, a Marine, had died overseas when Malik was just a boy, leaving a permanent ache in both him and Angela. Angela picked up her purse and looked at him with gentle eyes. "Baby, I'm heading out. Make sure you lock the door when you leave for school." Malik nodded without looking up. "I will, Ma. You be safe." She touched his shoulder before leaving, something she always did. It reminded her she still had something precious in this world. When the apartment door shut, the small space felt too quiet. Malik set the lock down and stared at the empty chair across from him. His father used to sit there, teaching him how simple mechanics could reveal truths hidden from the world. Malik still remembered the way his father said, "Every lock has a rhythm. You just have to listen." The lessons had stayed with him long after the man himself was gone. Angela's first job of the day was at the Grant estate, a sprawling mansion owned by billionaire investor Richard Grant. The property was enormous, gardens trimmed like art pieces, fountains taller than people, and windows so polished you could see your thoughts in them. Angela had cleaned the estate for almost 6 years, always careful to stay out of the way. Richard Grant was the kind of man who walked like the world belonged to him. Arrogance clung to him like cologne. He never remembered Angela's name, but he always remembered to criticize something. This morning, Angela sensed tension the moment she stepped through the grand foyer. Richard's voice echoed through the marble hall, louder and sharper than usual. "This is ridiculous. Not a single expert can open it," he barked. Angela pushed her cleaning cart forward, hoping to slip past unnoticed. But curiosity tugged at her when she heard him again. "It's been locked for decades. I inherited a worthless tomb." She paused outside the office. Inside, Richard paced like an angry storm, his hand waving wildly as he shouted into his phone. On the floor behind him sat an enormous black safe, old, scratched, and stubborn-looking. A man in a suit hovered nearby, offering nervous explanations. "Sir, it's a custom-built safe from the 70s. The company that made it shut down years ago. And not one of you geniuses can crack it?" Richard snapped. "What do I even pay you people for?" Angela quietly began dusting the corner shelves, praying he wouldn't involve her in his meltdown. But Richard's eyes darted toward her. "You," he said sharply. "You've been here how long?" Angela froze but answered politely. "About 6 years, sir." "And in 6 years, have you ever seen this safe open?" "No, sir." "Of course not," he muttered. "This thing is impossible. A coffin with a handle." He kicked the safe lightly, then gave a loud, humorless laugh. "I swear, I'll give $500 million to anyone who can open it. That's how desperate I am." The man in the suit chuckled as if it were a joke, but Angela didn't. People like her didn't laugh at money jokes that big. Money like that could carry entire families through generations, buy homes, cure debts, pay for education, change whole lives. But to Richard, it was just a careless number thrown out during his tantrum. He waved impatiently. "Go clean the kitchen. This day is already a mess." Angela nodded and left, refusing to let the sting of his tone break her spirit. She had survived harder days. That night, when she returned home exhausted, Malik immediately sensed something heavy in her expression. "Ma, what happened?" he asked gently. Angela set her keys down and leaned on the counter. "Just foolishness. Mr. Grant is upset because he can't get his old safe open. He started yelling that he'd pay $500 million to anyone who could open it." Malik lifted his head slowly. $500 million. "It's nothing," she said quickly. He wasn't serious. Just showing off again. "What kind of safe was it?" Angela shrugged. "Big, heavy, black, old-fashioned. He said it was custom-built years ago." Malik felt something stir inside him. He tried to ignore it, but the thought kept tapping at him like a heartbeat. He had studied old safes online, spent hours watching videos, taken apart rusty locks he found at yard sales. His father's words lived inside him like a compass. Later that night, when Angela went to bed, Malik sat awake, staring at the ceiling. He imagined the tumblers inside that safe, the old mechanics, the worn-down dial. Something called to him, not the money, but the challenge. The puzzle. The next day at school, he drifted through classes without hearing much. His mind replayed the description of the safe over and over. By the time the final bell rang, he had made a decision he couldn't shake. Instead of heading home, Malik walked to the Grant estate. The guards recognized him from all the times he had brought his mother lunch, so they waved him through. He found Angela wiping down a hallway mirror. She turned in shock when she saw him. "Baby, what are you doing here?" she whispered. "I brought you lunch," he said, handing her a small container. "Ma, please. I need to see the safe." Angela's breath caught. "Malik, no. I can't lose this job." "You won't," he said softly. "Just 5 minutes. I won't touch anything." She looked into his eyes and saw the same determination she had seen in his father's. The same steady confidence, the same quiet bravery. Her heart tightened. After a long moment, she nodded. "Fine. But stay behind me. And if anyone comes, you walk out immediately." She led him to the office. Richard was outside by the pool, yelling into another phone. Angela quickly stepped into the room with her cart, and Malik slipped in behind her. The safe sat in the corner, silently daring anyone to challenge it. Malik walked toward it slowly, as if approaching something sacred. He crouched down, placing his ear against the cold metal. He ran his fingers across the dial, noting the scratches, the wear, the age. It was old but not broken. Complicated but not impossible. "Malik, please don't," Angela whispered, but her voice faded when she saw the calm focus on his face. He began turning the dial gently. The soft clicks inside the safe whispered like tiny footsteps. Left, a faint click. Right, another. Left again, softer, deeper. The sounds became clearer as he found the rhythm. He closed his eyes to listen better. "This is a double-wheel lock," he murmured. "They were popular decades ago. Slower but predictable." Angela didn't understand the words, but she understood the focus in his posture. He was in a world of his own, guided by instinct and memory. Malik twisted the dial again. Click, click. The final tumbler fell into place. He pulled the handle gently. A heavy clunk filled the room. The safe door opened. Angela gasped and covered her mouth. Inside the safe were stacks of envelopes, old photographs, and a sealed letter labeled, "For Richard, from Dad." Malik stared at it, shocked. "Ma, I didn't mean to open it. It just happened." Before Angela could speak, a furious voice rose behind them. "What in God's name are you doing?" Richard Grant stormed into the room, his face flushed with rage. His eyes bounced from Angela to Malik to the open safe, and his expression twisted. "You broke into my safe," he shouted. Angela stepped forward, trembling. "Sir, please, he wasn't stealing anything. He just—" "Save it," Richard barked. "You brought your son into my home to take from me?" "No," she cried. I would never. Richard turned on Malik. How did you open it? How did a janitor's kid do something my experts couldn't? Malik swallowed. I listened. Richard scoffed. Is that supposed to be funny? You expect me to believe you cracked a $500,000 safe with your ear? Malik stayed quiet. Richard paced angrily. You touched my property without permission. Do you understand that you could be arrested? Angela's voice trembled. Sir, please. Don't do this to us. I should call security right now, he shouted. Malik lifted his chin slightly. You said you'd give $500 million to anyone who could open it. Richard turned stiff. The room felt frozen. That was a figure of speech, he snapped. You still said it, Malik replied softly. Richard glared at him with hatred and confusion tangled together. For a moment, he looked less like a billionaire and more like a frightened son staring at a truth he wasn't ready for. Malik nodded toward the letter inside. Ask your father why he locked it. Richard stiffened. His eyes shifted to the envelope. His expression cracked, not anger this time, but something wounded. Angela grabbed Malik's arm. Come on. We're leaving. Now. She pulled him out of the office, her heart pounding with fear of consequences she couldn't afford. All the way home, she kept shaking her head. Baby, what were you thinking? People like him can destroy our lives. But Malik looked out the car window with the quiet certainty of someone who had just unlocked more than a safe. He had unlocked a secret. A family wound. A truth that would change all of them. And none of them were ready for what came next. Angela barely slept that night. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Richard Grant's furious expression, the open safe, and Malik's calm face as he stood his ground. She kept imagining police lights outside their apartment or a letter saying she had been fired. Fear clung to her chest the way grief once had. By sunrise, she felt as if she had aged years in a single night. Malik was already awake, staring at the same padlock he had worked on the previous morning. His hand seemed steady, but Angela could see the worry in his shoulders. She wanted to scold him, hug him, protect him, and shake him all at once. Baby, she said softly, we can't go back there. Not for a while. I know, Ma, he replied, his eyes still lowered. I didn't try to cause trouble. I know you didn't, she said, sitting beside him. But people like Mr. Grant aren't used to being challenged. They don't forget when someone makes them look small. Malik took a slow breath. Ma, I wasn't trying to make him look small. I just wanted to see if I could do it. Angela rested her hand on top of his. You opened his safe, baby. That alone could make him feel humiliated. And asking him about the letter, that shook him even more. You saw his face, Malik said quietly. He didn't even know it existed. Angela nodded. And that's exactly why he's dangerous right now. They sat in silence for a moment. Outside, the street was waking up, cars passing by, kids laughing on their way to school. Life went on, even when fear tried to stop it. Just as Angela stood to start her day, there was a sudden knock on the door. 3 hard knocks. Angela froze. Malik looked up, eyes wide. The knock came again, firm and sharp. Angela's heart raced, and she whispered, Stay behind me. She walked to the door and slowly opened it. A tall man in a gray suit stood in the hallway. His face was serious, and his hands were folded in front of him. Mrs. Parker? He asked politely. Angela nodded, unable to speak. I'm Mr. Grant's head of security. He requested to see you and your son at the estate. Right now. Angela felt her stomach drop. Sir, did we do something wrong? I'm not here to discuss that, he said gently. Mr. Grant simply wants to speak with you both. He insisted. Angela swallowed hard. She turned to Malik, who stepped forward bravely. Ma, it's okay. The security man led them outside to a black SUV parked by the curb. The ride to the Grant estate felt longer than usual. Angela kept wringing her hands, and Malik kept glancing out the window, lost in thought. When they arrived, the gates opened slowly. The guards didn't smile the way they usually did. Something felt different, heavier, quieter. They were escorted into the mansion, and led down a long hallway toward the office where everything had happened the day before. Richard Grant was inside, but he was not shouting today. He was sitting at his desk, shoulders bent, the opened letter in front of him. His face was pale, his eyes red around the edges. He looked like a man who hadn't slept at all. Angela stepped forward nervously. "Sir, you wanted to see us?" Richard didn't look up at first. He kept staring at the letter, his fingers pressed against his forehead as if he were trying to hold himself together. When he finally lifted his gaze, something in him looked different, broken, even. "You weren't supposed to open that safe," he said quietly. Angela rushed to apologize. "Sir, my son didn't mean any harm. Please don't fire me. He's just curious and talented with locks, and—" Richard raised his hand gently. "I'm not firing you." Angela froze. Malik looked confused. Richard took a deep breath. "Yesterday, when he opened that safe, I thought he was humiliating me. I thought he was making a fool out of me in my own home. But he wasn't. He brought me the one thing everyone else failed to give me." He picked up the letter and held it with trembling fingers. "He gave me this." Angela watched him cautiously. Malik studied his face, trying to understand. Richard leaned back in his chair. "This is a letter from my father. He wrote it before he died. I never knew it existed. I never knew he left anything behind." Angela spoke softly. "I'm sorry, sir." Richard shook his head. "Don't be. You didn't do anything wrong." He opened the letter slowly, as if afraid it might crumble. His voice cracked as he read it aloud. "Richard, my son, if you're reading this, it means I'm gone. I know we didn't end on good terms. I know I wasn't the father you needed. I regret that more than anything. I left this safe for you, not for the money inside, but for the memories. For all the things I never said. I loved you, even if I showed it too late." His voice trembled, and he stopped reading. He wiped his forehead with the back of his hand. Angela felt her heart tighten. A lifetime of pain sat between each word. "There were also photos," he whispered. "Photos of me and him fishing, photos from my first birthday party, letters he wrote but never sent. There was love in that safe. More love than I ever got when he was alive." Angela felt tears sting her eyes. Malik stared softly at the billionaire, seeing not a rich man but a hurting son. Richard looked directly at Malik. "How did you know? Yesterday you said, 'Ask your dad why he locked it.'" "How?" Malik spoke quietly. "When I saw the letter addressed to you, and the photos, I just knew it wasn't about money or business. People lock things they're scared to face." Richard swallowed hard. "You're a smart kid." Malik shrugged shyly. "My dad taught me how to read locks. And sometimes, people." Silence filled the room. Then Richard stood and walked around the desk. He stopped in front of Malik. "You opened something yesterday that no one else could," he said softly. "Not just a safe. You opened something inside me I never wanted to deal with." Malik didn't look away. Sometimes people need help facing their hurt. Richard nodded slowly. "Yes. And you gave me that." Angela felt confused. "Sir, what does that mean for us?" Richard took a breath. "It means I owe you both more than I can explain." Angela stiffened. "Sir, please don't feel pressured. We don't want trouble." "You're not in trouble," he said quickly. "You're the opposite." He turned to Malik again. "You changed something in my life with your talent. Something no therapist, no expert, no millionaire engineer could do. I offered $500 million as a joke." What you did wasn't a joke. Angela's heart stopped. She felt dizzy. Sir, she whispered, please, don't say things that might hurt to hear. But Richard shook his head. I'm not joking. I can't give you $500 million, but I will not pretend I owe you nothing. Malik blinked slowly, stunned. Angela stared at the carpet, afraid to breathe. Richard continued. I want to give you something real. Something life-changing, but not ridiculous. Something I can do cleanly and legally. He paced slowly, thinking aloud. I can pay for your full college education. Any school in the country. Full ride. Housing, books, meals. Everything. You choose the university. Malik's breath caught. I'll also set aside a trust fund for you, Richard added. So that when you turn 21, you'll have enough to start a business, pursue a dream, or simply not drown under poverty the way so many gifted young people do. Angela's knees weakened. She grabbed the back of a chair. Richard faced her gently. And as for you, Mrs. Parker, you will never clean another house again. I'm offering you a management position at one of my local properties. Better pay, better hours, benefits, respect. Angela shook her head, tears falling. Sir, why would you do this? Because your son helped me face something I buried for decades, Richard said softly. Because he reminded me what real courage looks like. And because I see the kind of mother you are. Malik wiped his eyes with his sleeve. Sir, thank you. Richard hesitated, then said something he had never said to anyone cleaning his home. You saved me. The room fell quiet. Just when Angela thought the moment couldn't get heavier, Richard spoke again. And there's something else, he whispered. Something I need to ask. Angela looked up nervously. What is it? Richard turned to Malik slowly. His voice cracked. Could you stay a little while and help me read the rest of the letters from the safe? I don't think I can do it alone. Malik nodded gently. Yes, sir. I can. Richard gave a broken smile. For the first time, Angela saw him look human. And for the first time in years, Richard Grant began to heal. The days following the meeting at the Grant estate felt unreal to Angela. She moved around their apartment carefully, almost afraid that if she breathed too loudly, everything that happened would disappear like a dream. The memory of Richard sitting at his desk, crying over the letter from his father, replayed in her mind over and over. It reminded her of Malik's tears years ago when he learned his own father wouldn't be coming home. People carried grief in different ways, she thought. Some buried it behind money. Some hid it behind work. Some carried it quietly until it reshaped their hearts. Malik spent most of his next day after school at the estate, much to Angela's worry. But Richard had personally requested it, and there was something about the billionaire's voice, soft, tired, almost pleading, that made it hard to refuse. When Malik entered the mansion, he found Richard sitting beside the open safe again, the same letter spread across his desk. But this time, he wasn't yelling into phones or pacing like a storm trapped in a suit. He looked like a man still adjusting to the weight of an old wound. The moment he saw Malik, he straightened a little, as if relieved. Thank you for coming, Richard said quietly. Malik nodded. Yes, sir. Richard motioned toward the letters and photos. I didn't open any more without you. It felt wrong doing it alone. So Malik sat with him. The two went through each envelope one by one. Some held birthday cards Richard never received. Some had little stories his father wrote about their fishing trips. Some had apologies that came far too late. There were photos of a younger Richard, smiling beside a man who never learned how to say, I'm proud of you, out loud. Whenever Richard's voice broke, Malik waited. He didn't speak unless spoken to. He didn't offer advice. He just sat there, steady and patient, the way his own father used to sit beside him when he cried over scraped knees or bad dreams. At one point, Richard lowered a photograph and looked at Malik with softened eyes. You have something rare, he said quietly. Patience. Understanding. Those aren't normal for someone your age. Malik shrugged gently. I learned a lot from my dad. Richard sighed. I wish I could have said the same growing up. They went through the last letter. It was short, uneven, the handwriting shaky. Richard stared at it without reading for several seconds. Want me to read it? Malik asked softly. Richard hesitated, then nodded. Malik opened the letter and read it aloud. My son, I wish I had been better. I wish I had been brave enough to show you the love you deserved. I hope one day you can forgive me. Not for my sake, but for yours. Do not carry my mistakes into your own life. Be softer than I ever was. Malik folded the letter slowly and placed it on the table. Richard wiped his face with a trembling hand. That's it, Malik said gently. That's all he left. Richard closed his eyes. It's enough. For a long moment, the two sat in silence. No anger. No pride. Just grief finally allowed to breathe. After a while, Richard cleared his throat. Malik, yesterday, when you told me people lock things they're scared to face, were you talking about me? Or about your mom? Or yourself? Malik looked down. I think everyone locks things away. He paused. Sometimes we open them accidentally. Sometimes we open them because it's time. Richard nodded slowly. Maybe your father would have been proud of you for doing that. Malik smiled faintly. I think he would have. When they left the office, Richard insisted on driving Malik home himself. It surprised the guards and shocked Angela when she saw the billionaire's sleek car pull up outside their building. She rushed to the door, panic rising in her chest. Sir, is everything all right? Is Malik okay? She asked breathlessly. Richard stepped out of the car. He's more than okay. Angela looked at her son, searching his face for reassurance. Malik nodded, offering a small smile. Richard spoke with a calmness she had never heard from him. Mrs. Parker, I want to talk to you about the future. Malik's and yours. Angela stiffened nervously. Sir, please. We don't want any trouble. There is no trouble, Richard said firmly. There's only opportunity. They walked upstairs to the small apartment. Richard looked around quietly. The space was humble. Old wallpaper, second-hand chairs, a small kitchen table with a scratch in the wood. But the home felt warm. Lived in. Loved. Angela invited him to sit. Malik stood near the window, unsure of what was coming next. Richard folded his hands and spoke gently. I'm finalizing Malik's scholarship paperwork this week. Every expense will be covered, and I will personally secure his admission to any top program in the country. Angela pressed a hand over her mouth. Tears filled her eyes. Richard continued, and your new position begins next month. You'll manage one of my downtown properties. It pays 3 times what you make now, and comes with full benefits. It's yours as long as you want it. Angela's tears overflowed. Sir, why would you do all this for us? Richard looked at her with sincerity he wasn't used to showing. Because your son helped me open a wound I spent my whole life pretending wasn't there. And because when that safe opened, I realized how much I lost by not being brave enough to face my own father. I don't want Malik losing out on his future the way I lost out on parts of mine. Angela wiped her face with her sleeve. Sir, I don't have the words. You don't need any, Richard said softly. This is something I want to do. Malik looked at him. Sir, thank you. Richard smiled weakly. Don't thank me yet. You have a long road ahead. But you're going to do something great, Malik. I can feel it. The billionaire stood and extended his hand to Angela. She took it hesitantly, overwhelmed. As he left the apartment, he turned one last time toward Malik. You opened a safe full of memories, son. But you also opened a door in my life. That's worth more than any number I ever shouted in frustration. When Richard was gone, Angela sat heavily in a chair and let out a trembling breath. "Baby, do you understand what just happened?" Malik nodded slowly. "Yeah, Ma. I think I do." She pulled him into a tight hug. "Your daddy would be so proud of you. You hear me? So proud." Malik closed his eyes and held her back. "I hope so." Weeks passed. Malik continued visiting the estate occasionally, not to open safes but to keep Richard company as he cleaned the old photos and organized the memories his father left behind. They talked about life, about regret, about second chances. The unlikely bond between a wealthy man and a poor teenager deepened into something real. One day as they walked through the garden, Richard said, "You know, Malik, for all my money, this is the first time in my life I felt like I gained a family instead of losing one." Malik smiled gently. "Families come in all shapes, sir." Richard nodded. "They do. And sometimes, they arrive when you least expect them." In time, Angela settled into her new job, finally able to breathe without the weight of financial fear crushing her every day. Malik began preparing for college, something he once thought was out of reach. And Richard visited them often, sometimes for dinner, sometimes just to talk. He wasn't the same man who mocked the world from behind wealth. He was softer, more human. And one evening, as they sat together in the living room, Malik reflected on everything that had happened. "So many people walk past others like they're invisible," he said quietly. "But sometimes, all it takes is opening one door to see each other clearly." Richard nodded with emotion in his eyes. "And sometimes it takes a kid with good ears to open that door." They all laughed softly, the room warm with gratitude and something deeper, healing. Because in the end, the safe had not revealed money or treasures. It revealed something far more valuable. Forgiveness, family, and a chance to rewrite the future.